Welcome, everyone. Happy to have you as we continue our series, 1933 Germany. Are we, and particularly we as Catholic Christians, repeating history? We'll begin, as always, with a prayer. Prayer for America. Come, Holy Spirit. We ask you to grant us the power of the Holy Spirit so that we may listen to your guidance and walk in your love. We are concerned for those innocent people being hurt by mass deportation, for Abrego Garcia's return from the El Salvador prison where he was mistakenly deported, for the many lives being lost in Gaza, for the people in Ukraine who are losing America's support, for our disassociation from NATO and all the countries relying on the United States for support. Guide us in our work to peacefully return to being the America who says, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore." Come, Holy Spirit, speak through each of us today. Give us the spiritual depth to truly listen to your guidance spoken through each of us. Help us to stand up for those facing abuse and take action against injustice. All this we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Our presentation today is being facilitated by Margaret Mary Moore from Chicago, and most of our speakers are from Germany and from Austria. Margaret Mary, let's go over to you.
Okay, thanks. We want to welcome everyone and ask you if you want to have a pencil and paper so that you can copy down what's in the chat, because we want everybody to be able to link up with each other from the various groups. I think many of you speak German, many speak English, many speak both. So let me introduce Regina Franken first. Regina is a social scientist and a theologian. She has worked in international politics and comparative theology. She has worked for several international organizations in North and Sub-Saharan Africa and has taught at various universities, international institutions, and in think tanks. Her specific subjects are international politics and cooperation, peacekeeping strategies, and aspects of religion-based extremism and fundamentalism and its implications for society. So Regina will be sharing with us in a few minutes, and I'd like to draw attention also to her book, God's Strong Daughters, which in English you can get from the website, because she is on the board of Catholic Women's Council, and that will be in the website indicated in the chat. And her book is published in German. So thank you, Regina. And I'd like to introduce now Father Max Stetter. He was ordained in 1966 for the Archdiocese of Augsburg, Germany. And for 25 years, he was a missionary in Uganda and Kenya, where he experienced small Christian communities as a new way of being church. And he continues to build up small Christian communities in his archdiocese today. In his diocese, they're celebrating 33 years of Bible seminars and in these small Christian communities, and he's been a director for the last 13 years. Max is on the steering committee of the Association of Catholic Priests and the International Church Reform Network. And you can see those websites in the chat. So I will introduce now Christian Weisner. Christian is from the small town of Wachau, outside of Munich. And he and his family live in Bavaria, which is outside in Munich, and he's retired city planner. He's been involved in Catholic Church reform work for over 30 years, and he is the co-initiator of the referendum on We Are Church in 1995. This is important because it was started in Austria after the abuse scandal in Vienna of Cardinal Hans Hermann Grohr. So Christian is also the co-founder of We Are Church International in 1996. And since then, he is the leader of the team of Wir sind Kirche, We Are Church, Germany. So their 30th anniversary will be coming up next year. So let me introduce now Father Helmut Schüller. Let's see here. Father Helmut was ordained in 1977 as a parish priest. And in 1988 to 95, he was director of Caritas Vienna. In 1995 to 99, he was the Vicar General of the Archdiocese of Vienna. Since 1999, he has been a university chaplain. And in 2006, he started the Austrian Parish Priest Initiative. And he's a co-founder of the Austrian We Are Church, Wir sind Kirche. So let me also introduce Paul Ulbrich, who lives in the Munich area with his wife, 3 children, 6 grandchildren. He studied theology in Tübingen in Paris. In his professional life, Paul is a businessman and involved in industry. He has been volunteering for years in several parishes and for many years in reform groups, and especially We Are Church. And he's a founding member of the Gemeindeinitiative.org. And we put that in the chat. So any of you would like to investigate what Paul is doing there, you can click on that website. Okay, so now I think we will get into, each person can say a few things before we do the PowerPoint. So Regina, would you like to start just giving quick reflections about growing up after post-World War II in Germany?
Yes, but you asked us to say a little bit about where we are coming from. Religion in my family was never an issue. So I come from a multi-religious atheist family. My mother converted to the Catholic Church. My grandfather was Huguenot. My grandaunt was Russian Orthodox, and my father was Catholic. So I grew up in Germany and in France, and I learned about the Holocaust and the Nazi regime basically at school. So when I went to school, that was mandatory. In Germany, I learned a lot about the Holocaust and the Nazi regime. In France, almost nothing about anti-Semitism and the Holocaust. Here, there was only the glorious resistance. I only learned about the role the French society played in the deportation of Jews and others shortly before I graduated, but never before that. The Jewish religion in my family was present but not mentioned. As I said, my grandmother called herself an atheistic woman who doesn't have a religion, but she spoke quite often Yiddish, which was the language of the Jewish people in the eastern part of Europe. When I was 13, my mother took me to the synagogue, and she said, it is important that you know our roots. So the whole topic was present, but it was never pointed out specifically. As children, we learned nothing about why they had to flee from the Nazis, but we learned a lot about why they had to escape later from the Russian territory. So that was mainly the focus. This anti-Semitism, actually, as long as I lived in Germany, I never have had any problems with anti-Semitism. The first time I actually got into contact with that was when I went to Tunis and Cairo for Arabic lessons. So then people get known that I'm German. They started anti-Semitic talks because they thought that because I'm a German, they are free to do so. And that was very disturbing for me. So later on during the last years, this had changed. We experience a lot of anti-Semitism in schools and university. And I worked quite sometimes together with the Jewish Museum in Berlin and in Cape Town. And during our projects there, we had many problems with anti-Semitism, especially at universities and in schools.
Good. Christian, would you like to comment on your experiences growing up? And you said your father was also a prisoner of war in America. Yeah, go ahead, just unmute.
Okay, hello everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, whatever your time is at the moment. I was born 6 years after World War II. I had a wonderful childhood in northern Germany. My parents were refugees. They lived in former East Germany, what is now belongs to Poland. My father was a judge, and as a judge, he had to join the Nazi party, the NSDAP. So he was not a big Nazi, but that was normal at that time. He was only one day in war during World War II, and then he was a prisoner of war, and he stayed 1.5 years in the United States. And after World War II, our family was united with very few victims also, and I think that I really had a very good childhood, and knowing about the Nazi regime was not at school. It was step by step in my adult life when I studied in Germany or studied in London. I think, yeah, that is, and now 20 years ago, I moved to my wife and we are living in the city of Dachau. I think one of you mentioned the city of Dachau. So living in this city, it's a beautiful city. It's a suburb, an historic suburb of Munich, but it's feel depressing every time you are cutting potatoes or you peel potatoes. You think of hunger that was here in the concentration camp. I think that's for the moment. Thank you and for inviting me to this webinar. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Father Helmut, would you like to say anything about your experiences and what was in the atmosphere?
Yes, my experience is not as heavy. My father was born 1926. That means he was a soldier with 19, and then the war was finished. My mother was born 1930. That means they had only experiences of children and children and young people. So all I know about this is that what our father, my father, my mother told me, but the greater part of my knowledge stems from books and from literature and from discussions. So a direct, I had not as much experience as others maybe in our country. Yes, so I'm interested, but I have no special experience with Nazi time.
Okay, Paul, would you like to comment on how your experience was, how you learned about what was going on?
Yes,
I had good
okay.
luck and
Oh, sorry.
I had good luck and was born 10 years after finish of the Second World War. But my father is a refugee of the Eastern German area because he was born near Leipzig. And I have very present about what my parents did talk to us children, which experience they had with the bombings, with all cruel situations which happen in war. And even our children are very interested to get these informations by the grandparents. And for my mother, it's the situation of the war in Ukraine. It's a re-traumatization because after many years in peace, they have the same situation as they know it as children. My mother is born in 1930, and so she was, with a clear mind within the war. They went to farmers to get something as food to eat. And one point I still remember very clearly by my grandmother. She was mother of 6 children. And so she was struggling against the Nazi regime and didn't close her mouth. She was on the list in her village to be one of the next persons which will be deported to a concentration camp. And so I'm not directly confronted with the Nazi regime, but this is very near in our family. And I'm grateful to have parents and grandparents which gave us children the importance to how important it is to struggle for peaceful and democratic system in the country. So I will finish at this point.
Thank you so much. Father Max, you've had the longest experience in both Europe and also in Africa. So would you give us your impressions? Did he push the wrong button and got, there he
No.
is. Oh, there you are.
Born in December 1939, I remember when I go to my home village, there's a certain house which gives me strange feelings. It's the house of the Gauleiter Godel, a man, the boss of the Nazi regime of our village. And he used to assemble people on a Sunday morning so that they couldn't go to church. I didn't understand what he said, but I remember from the feelings of my parents, it was not good. He also visited families. He came to our home and he touched my sister, blonde hair, blue eyes, and said, "You have to join the Federation of the girls." Fortunately, she was too young for that. I do remember the Volksempfänger. There was a little radio set which only had the cracked voice of Adolf Hitler and nothing else. We were not allowed to listen to any other station. Then I was told as a child, when you see the warplanes flying low, you have to lie flat into the grass. I remember forced laborers like Polish in different industries in Germany. I remember the financial crash when we had millions of banknotes, no worth. I remember from older friends, they were saying, Christ the King, the last Sunday in the liturgical year, was a big celebration for the youth, a demonstration. They were not allowed to take their banners, the flags of their different groups, to the church. So they folded them, hid them under their coats, went into the church, and then unfolded those banners. Christ the King. I do remember with Catholic Theological Union, Chicago, to visit Jerusalem, to visit the museum Yad Vashem. And I felt very bad as the only German among about 30 Americans who saw what Germany had done. This in short.
Mhm. Thank you so much. Now, Regina, would you like to begin your presentation though? Hoping to highlight what's happening in Germany and helping Americans to reflect on our situation here?
So can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes.
Is everything fine? Okay, good. Yes, last time we had John speaking from the perspective of a historian. So I'm not a historian, I'm far more an analyst. Therefore, I will focus on 2 points. The first is the structure of society, and the second, how politics, but far more how religions manage to influence and to manipulate people. So I would like to pick up on the point that was raised by John in the last session, the role of society. As I said, I went to school in France, so I choose the French author to analyze this aspect of the French society. Following the question, how could all this happen? Jules Romain wrote an analysis in which he divided the French society into groups and communities, which he called unamis. At the end, he had published 27 books of analysis with many, many different groups and the so-called unamis. So the defragmentation of the society in the 1920s was already on a very, very high level. And there was not one French, German, or Italian society, but many smaller, medium, or even bigger groups. And the membership between these groups, they shifted easily. So it is much easier to break out bits and pieces from small communities rather than from large communities. And his conclusion at the end of this 27 book series was even people of good resigned and withdraw from society. And he took this as a reason why all this could have happened. I've selected 4 key groups from these unamis to show that the demands and that the challenges are a little bit similar from today. So let's start with the largest and the most powerful, but at the end, least influential group. The first women's rights movements in the 1920s, which you see on your left-hand side, enabled many changes that were seen by man as unnatural and threatening. And this is reflected in the current women's rights movement. Many laws and demands are seen by man in the society as a reduction of their rights and as a threat to their own position in the society and in the family. For example, the demand of higher percentage of women in parliament, gender-sensitive language, a big discussion all over the world, or an even bigger discussion, the demand for stricter laws in cases of rape, sexual harassment, and domestic violence. So the important thing is that the threat or the perceived danger does not come from politics or economy, but it comes from the own society, from the own environment. My family is affected, my workplace is affected, my community is affected. The same is with the gay rights movement. The gay rights movement in Germany started already in 1897 with Magnus Hirschfeld founding the first homosexual organization. So open-lived homosexuality was in the 1920s and is now, even today, seen as a liberation from social constraint, and it is widely accepted. But in many communities and groups, it triggers the fears about one's own sexuality, and this is seen as a threat to family values. So what I've just said for the women's organization is also relevant here. It is not a foreign peer group which is threatening one own's position, but the threat comes from the own group and the own area. This is slightly different for if we analyze the next group. The demand for equal rights and participation in the workplace has always been a demand towards economy and business. And it is seen by economy and business, like we had heard last time from John, as an intervention and an injustice form of repression. Nowadays, it had changed. Women's demands for equal pay and the so-called American DEI programs are added. So these in terms are made by a group within one's own group. So DEI is not only a demand to economy, to others, it's a demand on my own position, on my own workplace. And this, I added this group. You can also see this in church. So for more than 100 years, the Catholic Church has resisted so-called modernity. And if you look at this list, you can see that the demand back in the 1920s are not so different from the demands at the Synod, which ended last year, and that the reaction of the Vatican was the same. Stalling tactics, oppressive care behaviors, and the use and the forming of new coalitions. So religious communities, these two big relevant churches had during the time split into various smaller groups, and these smaller groups are denying each other demands and even the demands within the groups. So even if we talk about the reform-orientated groups in the church, they are not all the same. They are even denying each other's demands. So looking at all these parallels, the question is now, how get populist right-wing movements their ideology into an apparently progressive, reform-orientated social society? Because this is what we thought we had been. We all believed that we are a progressive society, that we are a reform-orientated society. And in our case, this is especially into the Christian society. So how could that happen in America? But it's not America, it's Hungary, it's Germany, it's France, it's Italy. You can see that all over. The key issue, in my opinion, so that's my opinion, are narratives, high impact and powerful narratives, who create so-called we-feeling between different groups. And in our case, it's a we-feeling between religious groups, the church, and right-wing populist movements. The list shows that although the different groups, the right-wing groups on the left-hand side and the church on the right-hand side, this list shows that other groups justify their position differently. They use almost the same narrative. And these similar narratives at the end are able to change the perspective of society. And we see that especially when it comes to women's rights. Here you have a close link between right-wing movement and religious groups. So this becomes even clearer when we look at where the main overlap in the narrative lies. This is the watchdog function these groups believe they can claim for themselves. So right-wing groups claim a watchdog function over social and Christian moral standard, and conservative Catholic groups are working on the same watchdog function over social, Christian, and Catholic moral standards. So this comes together, and that means rejection emancipation, rejection of homosexuality, rejection of social standard, and rejection of democratic structures. This is the common link between these two groups, and this makes these narratives so high impact and so powerful. Narratives also lead to establish coalition of convenience. In our case, they lead to unholy pacts and coalition. These coalitions are not immediately formed. They are often built up over a long period of time through networks. So the so-called unholy trinity between the Vatican, evangelical right-wing groups, Islamic countries, and now also autocratic countries like Russia or Hungary, they have repeatedly voted internationally against the legal incorporation of the demands which are arising from the human rights. We could see this in the World Conference in Baku again. So these networks or unholy coalition focus on a few common narratives, the ones you can see here, and these messages. And they use them when they need, and they are constantly widening the range of their action. So if we want to change our perspective, this can only happen if we are aware of these narratives, of these common narratives, and above all, that we take them seriously. We have to watch out that we don't share narratives with right-wing groups. It's not enough to say we have other arguments or other justification. This morning I spoke with Max about the pro-life movement. If the bishops are marching together, this right-wing populists, on the same demonstration, it doesn't matter if they say later on, oh, but we have another justification for being here. We are not like them. You are seen in the same narrative, and you are seen in the same story, in the same pictures. And that makes the narrative more powerful for the right wing, for the populist movements. So we need to move away from this idea that we as church or religious group have a watchdog function on morality. What we need is far more to take into account our critical, socially critical watchdog functions, and that we have to focus on the equality of people. And the second thing is what, according to my opinion, what we need to do is we need to form new coalitions, and we need to form new peer groups. When I asked a nun in South Africa during apartheid, where I stayed for nearly 20 years, what we can do, she told me, we have to show that our narratives, that our vision of God is stronger than theirs. But for this, we all Christian churches and all Christian communities, we all have to work together. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Regina, for this challenging presentation and for challenging all of us to think about what you put in front of us. We're going to continue now with more input. Father Max, somebody's not muted in the background, just causing some static. So Father Max, would you be ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, wonderful.
Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet. I have it on. Just a moment. Share.
Mhm.
Send request. I send a request for the screen. Hope to get it. No, not.
You're good, Max.
Oh, is it on?
No.
I have sent a request for the screen and
You have
just
it,
a moment.
Max.
Okay, now I have it. Share. In the meantime, you can see.
Now we have it. Yes.
Okay. Strange enough, there is also. So I remember a certain celebration in our city here in Augsburg in Germany, which repeats every year. It's a memorial of the time of the bombardment of the city. And one of the speakers about 10 years ago said, "My famous professor, I hope he is not right, once said, this can happen 70 years later again." At the time he stated it, I said, impossible, incredible. In the meantime, I can see things, I can realize things. I am shocked to see what is happening today in Germany. So there is, I have some criteria from a lady who is French, who has Jewish roots, who is Black, who has an institute in Berlin for sectional justice. So she's a person who can sense what is going on. Observations that we normal citizens don't make. So I looked at publications here in Germany and in the States, and I saw so much common thinking today. So there's this famous or unfamous right-wing party, AfD, means Alternative for Germany. And the language they use, they speak of leftist ideological influences in kindergartens. Then I read in the New York Times, radical indoctrination in kindergarten. So it's a very similar way of language, of rhetoric, that is Nazism rhetoric. Then I go to the second one, linguistic framing of threats. There are talks by parliamentarians today of that particular party, René Springer. He says, we will repatriate foreigners to their home countries millions of times. This is not a secret plan. This is a promise for more security, for more justice, for the preservation of our identity for Germany. This is a Nazi language, straightforward, today to read in the newspapers. And then we have the other side, the use of the, Timothy Snyder, famous professor, says the use of the word anti-Semitism as a covering pretext for defunding education empties the concept of meaning. Then we come to media restrictions. There is still some microphone on. The first part of controlling the language is inverting the meaning. Whatever government does is good because by definition, the victims are the criminals and the terrorists. And there we have again Timothy Snyder, the New York Times. The second part is deterring the press or anyone else from challenging the perversion by associating anyone who objects with crime and terror. Trump spoke of asking Attorney General Pam Bondi to find legal ways to abduct Americans and leave them in foreign concentration camps. Language, political polarization. Again, one of those of that right-wing party, Alternative for Germany, I say to these leftist thought terrorists, to this party network very clearly, when we come, things will be cleaned up. There will be a thorough purge. Politics will be made for the people and only for the people, because we are the people, dear friends. What language is that today? It's incredible. One who has realized and witnessed parts of that Nazi regime, for me, this is incredible. I never could imagine that in my lifetime, ever, anything like this. For us, it was clear, we have learned, we have understood, now things are different. And then we have, of course, the famous saying, Springfield, they're eating dogs. People came in, they're eating cats, and so on. Another criterion to watch out for is institutional control. The leader principle of German, the Führerprinzip, is the idea that a single individual directly represents the people, and that therefore all of his actions are by definition legal and proper. Trump's advisors claim that what he is doing is popular. The claim, as in legal filings, that the president is acting from a personal mandate from the people has the same problem. Attorney General said, these are Americans, he is saying, who have committed the most heinous crimes in our country. Language of Nazism. Further to the institutional control, we have different settings of churches, but the new Christian fundamentalism has long since arrived in Europe. But there have been also repeated attempts to remasculinization within the Catholic Church. I take this from a standard Vienna paper, Austria. And then there is this man, my church was weak, says John Doyle in an interview. Every mass was full of women, weak Christian women who would pray for their enemies, say the influencer who is enthusiastic about racial, queer, hostile preachers. Even Doyle himself is surprised that his videos full of racism, homophobia, misogyny are not deleted from the platform. What is going on? They're coming towards the end. The other thing is the societal insecurity. Emilia Roig is the lady, the French lady with Jewish roots and black. And she says, I read the news, run the calculations, and try to gauge how much sand remains in the hourglass. I assess whether any of my 6 contingency plans are still viable and what their vulnerabilities might be. This is how people feel, and some of the natives would even notice anything of this. And then we have, on the other side, he openly defied the Supreme Court, not once, but twice. He refused to reinstate the Associated Press in the White House, despite the Supreme Court ruling ordering their return. In a meeting with El Salvador's president, he signaled that he would not comply with another Supreme Court order. So we are coming to a simple way to escape from law is to move people bodily into a physical zone of exception in which the law, it is claimed, does not apply. We had these concentration camps in Nazi Germany, in different parts of Europe. And we have now in Trump and his advisors claimed that Kilmar Abrego Garcia, legal resident of the United States, whom US authorities abducted by mistake and sent to a concentration camp in El Salvador, was now beyond the reach of American law. To finalize, Bert Brecht is a famous writer from this town, Augsburg in Germany. He says the womb is still fertile from which this crawled. And it's almost every day that we realize this. Immediately after the war, there was dead silence. In school, we didn't hear anything. We heard about the Greeks and about the Romans and about anything except about the Germans. And Bert Brecht also says, where injustice becomes law, resistance becomes a duty. He says, those who fight can lose. Those who do not fight have already lost. The night seems black, but soon the light will come. And I will bring a few instances of this, our home city here in Augsburg, where we are trying to learn. What did we learn from all this? Never ever is now an enormous placard in the city council near place. What have we learned? This is now Augsburg, the city of Augsburg, having on their tablet, on their constitution, ethics, racism, anti-Semitism. People can complain, people can have agencies to turn to when they have problems. There is from 8th of May to 8th of August, more than 3 months, the peace celebration. This started in 1648, the religious peace. In 1629, the Protestants were forbidden in the Augsburg in Germany. And they regained equivalence in 1649. Since 1650, Protestants were celebrating in protest to the Catholics. Now we are equally as you are. And in the 1980s, the civic society, all the religions joined this yearly celebration of peace. We have one particular peace day, the 8th of August, which celebrates this. And now we have the entire society, religions, everybody mixed up to celebrate this time of peace. We have a round table of religions. On this photograph, it's not round, but it is, they have a constitution. They meet every 6 times a year. There is on the left a younger dialogue of religions Augsburg. On Holy Saturday, we had an inter-regional prayer meeting in the Protestant church. There were Muslims and Christians, and these are young students of all faith, and they meet regularly, particularly in the technical high school, prayer meetings for peace, meetings for trying to understand each other. Another sign we have learned here in Augsburg are these stepping stones in the streets of the town with names of people who had lived there, who were expelled, who had textile factories and ended up in Dachau concentration camp. So these stepping stones are reminders. You walk along and you see this golden thing and you read the name and you read the date he was executed, and you just wonder, is it possible in this, my hometown? And this now is 8th of August, the whole city society, religions and civic society celebrating together, sharing meals together in front of the city hall, trying. This is now 375th year of celebrating this peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Max. That was a rich presentation, gives us so much to think about. Let's keep moving here and have comments by Christian, Paul, and Father Helmut. Christian, would you like to continue? And then after that, we will have questions and answers from anybody who would like to ask questions and who would like to give their own comments. But Christian, we'll give it to you now.
Yes, thank you very much. I made a presentation, but I think it's not so suitable at the moment. I think I would, if you allow me, I would like to give you some thoughts.
Yeah,
Some
good.
30 years ago, at the beginning of the We Are Church movement, I was on a panel with a very conservative editor, and he said the Roman Catholic Church has overcome nationalism, the Roman Catholic Church has overcome socialism, and it will overcome democracy. And at that time, I was shocked and I couldn't believe it. But now I think we are in a situation like that. Um, now, democracy without values is worthless. I think that is the lesson we have learned from now. In Germany, where I live in Germany, we were very lucky after World War II that we had, with the help from America, and my father was a prisoner of war in America, and he was treated very well in the United States, and we all had a positive approach to the United States. And we were helped financially from the United States. And so in economic ways, we were very lucky off, much better off than East Germany. East Germany had to pay to the Russians and was much worse off. And I think during that time, we all talked about the Wirtschaftswunder, the miracle of economy. And yeah, Nazi politics were forgotten. We had an industrial boom. We had immigrations, guest workers from abroad. But we never thought that we were a country of immigration. And I think that is one mistake, that we were only considering economic welfare and social social economy, social market economy. So everything was quite calm and quite room. And then was 1989, the fall of the Berlin Wall. I think in my life, I've been to East Germany before the falling of the wall, and I'm now still in contact with it. That was interaction, a very positive interaction. And you know the book that people who said, now that's the end of history. Democracy has won. Capitalism has won. And I think that was the breaking point to my mind, that we said, oh, we don't have to bother anymore. Democracy is going on, is developing, and human rights, women's issue, and so on. It was very slow, but it went on. But with the economic problems, people are now more anxious about their future, their personal future. And with in 2015, in Germany, we had the migrants from Africa, from the Near East, and within 1 year there were more than 1 million immigrants to Germany, and that was at that time too much. I'm not against immigrants, and my wife, she's a teacher at a special school for immigrants, but I think Germany was not prepared to deal with this new situation. And I talked to people from East Germany, and I think in East Germany, East Germany had no many guest workers in the years before. So East Germany, it was really a shock for them. And the AfD started and was very strong in East Germany. At first, it was the change of currency, that the Deutschmark, the strong Deutschmark, should be exchanged with the euro. I think it's perfectly right, but people said, oh, something is taken from us. Then it was a European Union. I think it's perfectly good to have it, but people, for them, it's too difficult to feel. They don't feel as a European. They feel as a German or as a Saxonian, and so on and so on. And the AfD, and I think that is really the problem, the AfD is using all the critique. They are not making good answers. They're not giving good answers. And I think that is really a very difficult situation for us. How did the church, or how could we react to that? I think COVID really dispersed ourselves, so we could not connect. I think people are losing contact. The social media is an unregulated space for people to voice their criticism of those in power, but they are not answering, and they're not preparing, giving good solutions for the problems. COVID brought people into isolation. And I think, what can we do? We have to create spaces for real community activities. And I think this should be a major task for the churches and for all civil associations. Looking at that, so the closure of parishes in Germany, I think it will have disastrous effects, that people feel lonely, people feel single. They don't want to travel 30 kilometers to go to the Sunday service. Some people may good, but it's not the local community that could help each other, that could live in solidarity. I think that's a problem, that people don't accept facts and don't accept science. The world and its problems are so complex, and we have to reduce hostility towards undeniable facts and sciences. And I think now there are some ideas who were already presented by Regina and Max. We have to have a positive narrative. We have to offer realistic visions for solving current and future problems. So we have that at the moment with the new government that will came in power, and in 3 weeks' time, and so we have to solve political problems. I was really shocked by Elon Musk's word that empathy is the evil of all, empathy. So I think we have to contrast it. We have to bring a positive message. We have to teach solidarity and empathy for the weak. We have to strengthen regional identities, and we have to promote a global awareness. I think no country can solve its problem alone. It's not alone, and America first, or Catholic first, or whatever, or India first, or China first. I think that's not good at all. We are talking about the churches, and I've found some interesting documents. I think the churches have been split up before World War II. I think before World War II, there were parts of the church, of the Protestant church and of the Catholic church, who tried to fight Nazi regime. It was the Bekennende Kirche, confessing church is probably the right word, that since 1934, there was a Protestant opposition in Germany. And in the Catholic Church, I found
pastoral letter in 1943 by the German Catholic Bishops' Conference. It was called The 10 Commandments as the Law of Life for All Peoples. And that was critique at the killing of people in the concentration camps. And there were cardinals, some of them were quite controversial, Cardinal Graf von Galen, Cardinal Faulhaber, Cardinal Jäger. And it takes time to evaluate the history of those church leaders. I like the idea of Konrad Adenauer. He was our chancellor after World War II, but before World War II, he was had a chairperson in the Catholic lay organization, and he was mayor of the city of Bonn at the Rhine. And he should put Nazi flags on a bridge over the river Rhine. That was an order from Berlin. And Adenauer, as a mayor, said, I don't do that. I think so there had been at least some little opposition in the church. What is now the latest situation in Germany? So the new politicians, the new government is not in power. They try to find a compromise between the Christian Democratic Party and the Social Democratic Party, and that's very difficult between them. And in polls, the AfD, Alternative for Germany, so the right-wing party, they get better and better figures. Now, I think it was yesterday that they got 26% in the polls, and the Social Democratic Party was 25%. So that is really, I can't see an end of that. So they are getting bigger, bigger, and bigger. So the German bishops, and many others, they tried to write letters to make appeals. It was the German bishops who published a very good paper, Ethnic Nationalism and Christianity Are Incompatible. That's a very good academic paper. But it didn't stop people to vote for the AfD in the European elections, in regional elections, and in the federal elections in this year. There was another one, ecumenical appeal for the European elections. Title was For Our Common Future in a Strong Europe. And the last one was also an ecumenical appeal, Standing Up for Our Democracy. That was an appeal by the leaders of the Christian churches in Germany for the election of the German Bundestag. So I think it's a very difficult situation, and there's a word in it's the economy stupid. That's I think in the United States. I think it depends on success in economy. I think otherwise it will be very, very difficult. And I hope the civil society and the churches are part of the civil society. The civil societies, women's movements, gay and lesbian movements, ecological movements, we all have to to foster a positive narrative for the future, and even when the future will be difficult, we need a positive narrative. Thanks. I might send you my
my PowerPoint presentation later on, but I think listening to Regina's and Max's very perfect. I didn't want to double too much, and therefore I tried to do it this way. Thank you for your patience. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian, very much. We appreciate it. Could we hear some remarks from Paul, and then Father Helmut, you could close this session as being the person the most removed from post-World War II, and also your viewpoint we'll have from Austria. So Paul, you want to give a few remarks?
Yeah, thank you. I only want to add some remarks. In preparing of this webinar, I was asking, what is the system behind this autocracy, behind dictators and their acting? And I found very good information in a book by Nawadi Caroline Emke. She wrote a book 2016 Against the Hate. And there you find information. She started with the definition of fanaticism, which can be found already in an encyclopedia from the 18th century. And I won't bring all details here, but what is interesting, what are characteristics of fanaticism? Which are the associated ideas and doctrines, and what can we do against it? You will get a PDF of this, so you can read it afterwards. And I found even an idea of 33 theology professors from 1972. You know probably Hans Kung, which is one of the most famous theologians here in Germany. And they concluded in 5 points: do not remain silent, take action yourself, act together, strive for interim solutions, do not give up. Because I think the most important point at this situation worldwide is to get ideas and to create ideas, what we can do struggling against these systems, and how are these political systems, as we see it in America and many other countries, working. And if we get a transparency of the background of their working and of her systemation, we have a chance to get good ideas on what we can do against them. So much at this instant.
Yes, Paul, if you want to put any of that information, like the book and the author, in the chat, you can do that too. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, Father Helmut,
you.
would you like to give us your points of view and speak a little bit about Austria?
Yeah. I think from a more practical perspective, I want to add some ideas because, as far as I can see, there was on the one side in this 1930s and 40s in Germany and Austria, there was on the one side a lack of spaces for discussion and distinction of spirits. I think there is a chance for our Christian communities, for our parishes, and for all our communities to offer such spaces for discussion and distinction of spirits and of ideologies. There was also a big lack of support for those who stood up.
Mm-hmm.
They were very often alone, or only a few of them. Support for those who stood up and taking care for them and for their families, for example. And there was also a lack of support for those who stood up by bishops, by churches. There was an exemption in Germany. We had a so-called confessing church, a part of the evangelical church who had a lot of courage, and they had own seminaries for preachers and so on. And so this confessing church was very important for Germany. So that means that today we have some advantages, I think, we should use. The one are the social media, because there were no social media in the 30s and 40s. The second is, I think, the civil society as a whole. There was no developed civil society. And I think also an advantage of our time is the ecumenical and interreligious cooperation, which already exists and which makes it easier to build up networks and to build up strong support and so on and so on.
Mhm.
So that means we can learn of this 30s and 40s of the 20th century. We can learn of things that, yes, from that lack of spaces for discussion and distinction, for support of those who stood up, and support by churches and church leaders, and the social media advantage, so civil society advantage, and the advantage of ecumenical and interreligious cooperation we should use. Thank
Mhm.
you.
Yes, amen. Thank you so much. Now we want to give anybody in the audience, participants, an opportunity just to raise your hand to ask a question. You can ask a specific person, or any of the panelists, the speakers can answer, or give your own viewpoints on what you think about the situation. So who would like to go first? Can raise your hand or put the yellow hand up there.
Use the react button to raise your hand. We see you readily.
Okay. It's a lot to think about, isn't there? It's very rich input from everybody. Yes, Frank, do you want to give some comments or ask a question, please?
Margaret Mary, I posted a comment in the chat, which I felt I need to explain.
Yes.
I think one of the things that becomes clear, both in America now and in parts of Europe as well, is a lack of capacity for critical thinking about these
Yes.
issues. People read or they're told things. I watched a news report yesterday from America. They were talking about the IMF and its suggestion that the American economy will struggle. And they interviewed a couple of people who said, "We don't worry. It doesn't matter if life gets tough. You know, we support Donald Trump in all that he wants to do." And I thought there was the same kind of lack of critical thinking there that you probably saw 70, 80 years ago, 90 years ago in Europe. And, you know, Christian made some very valuable points. And one of them was the capacity to develop discussion, to develop core places where these issues can be talked about and where people can actually learn to think more critically about things that they read, whether it's in social media or in the press generally. Thank you.
Mhm. Amen to that. Who's next? A question or reflection?
I can't find the raise hand, Margaret Mary, but I thought I'd just unmute.
Good. Go ahead, Kathleen.
These are all really good ideas. And my question, especially to our European counterparts, because you're outside looking in to a certain extent. And sometimes it's easier to see the problem when you're not necessarily in it, even though it is a worldwide problem. How do we develop these critical thinking discussions? How do we use social media and civil societies and ecumenical councils to address these concerns that we've been talking about? I mean, I believe we need tangible, tactical actions that we can, each one of us can leave today with an action item that we can go do. Thank you.
Mhm. Mhm. I know, Christian, you might want to comment. You did bring up before that the synodal process you see in the small Christian communities could be a way to do this. Do you want to comment on that in a previous discussion?
I hope I got your question right. I think I like the idea of Helmut. There are people, prophets, prophets are doing things, and they are not supported. I think we should look for prophets of first movers, and we should, I think, and that is also true for our reformers. I think we should not be too contradiction to the church leaders now. I think now is a time that reform groups, parishes, local parishes, and even open-minded bishops or cardinals, I think if they found, and all the other civil groups, if they found if they build a coalition of the good people of goodwill, I think we have to be open-minded. And my second thought, I think that's a new thought, is I think the coming election of a new pope is so important for not only for the Catholic Church. And I hope that if Donald Trump and his wife, if they are coming to Rome, that they could get a feeling of some positive energy of our religious worldwide organization. And it's a very difficult situation. I hope that he is not only saying, okay, now Francis is gone, our enemy is gone. Now we can go on without any more critique on our migrants policy from the Catholic Church. No, I think it should be the other way around, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We have comments from Regina and Paul Hansen.
Right.
Yes, I'm totally with you. Yes, we need to create spaces of critical thinking. We need coalitions of goodwill. The Catholic Women's Council is an organization which works worldwide. We have members and members organizations in all over the world. So this is what we did during the Synod. But we have the feeling that even if we form these critical spaces of thinking, even if we form this coalition of goodwill, we are heard, but nothing is coming up. So the Synod at the end, from our point of view, was a nice time, but nothing really changed for women. The position not really changed. So what I fear is that the people get tired, that the people think that it's just like a therapy for critical people, putting them together in spaces where they can talk, and the church itself is not acting. It's doing something totally different. It's just saying, oh, we have to keep on listening. We have to keep on doing some more research. This is what they do since centuries. So I think we are a little bit in the same position we had during the last centuries already twice. We had through this in the 80s, and we had been through this in the 20s. So I really fear that people get tired and that people don't believe anymore that we really are a coalition of goodwill. I see that with many women's organizations. They come back and they say, well, what was it worth? We spent 3 years of many doings. The Catholic Women's Council did many listening sessions. We had fantastic experts. We wrote reports. We did surveys. I don't know what all we did. But what was the result at the end? People were saying, oh, yes, we listened to you. So now, after an hour, we have listened, and they went on, the bishops went on, the cardinals went on, and they did what they always wanted. So I see that the position of the church in the moment is very critical, because we as reform-oriented groups, we have to show that people can rely on it. And I fear that the more it comes, the less people think that they can rely on what the church is saying.
Thank you. Paul Hansen?
Yes, I hope my little comment is relevant. I think it is. I'm in touch with Germany twice a week, Berlin primarily and Munich. I'm also in touch with Gaza and Palestine twice a week. My father, during the Second World War, worked in the Canadian Embassy in Washington. My dad told me as a teenager growing up, we knew about the Holocaust and did nothing against it. Primarily because we Catholics, and I was an altar boy in the late 40s, early 50s, we prayed on Friday for the perfidious Jews. We prayed for the Christ killers. And so as a result, at the end of the Second World War, in 47, 48, when the Nakba took place in Palestine, we said nothing. We let it happen. 700,000 Palestinians were driven out. Today, I notice in our Canadian press in Toronto, Netanyahu and the foreign minister of Israel said nothing about Pope Francis's death. Nothing. A couple of years ago, I represented the religious orders of Canada to Palestine. I had to land in Amman, Jordan. I could not land in Tel Aviv. At the moment, we Canadians are told, at least I am, that the Border Patrol people from Canada into the States are checking 4 or 5 issues. One of them is what is called illegal ideas. And what is an illegal idea? To support or talk about Palestine. And so what I'm saying, folks, is that we who are looking for incredibly God presence through the human sacramental Christian life, we're living in a context. Richard Rohr the other day in a reflection noted, culture has Christianity for breakfast. And that is the culture in which we're living today. In any case, I'm hopeful, I really am. And that's why I still continue in my 82nd year of life. And that's why Johann Baptist Neuhäusler, when I'm in Munich, I go out to Dachau and I spend a day. And he's buried there and his grave is in the floor of the little chapel. And I talk to him because, as some of you might know, he ordained me a deacon in 1968 in Munich. So that's all I have to say. Let's be realistic. You can't even in Germany talk very much about Palestine. And so in the United States, my God, very similar. Look at the universities right now. Look at Harvard. Look at Columbia and so on. C'est ça, c'est tout. Merci beaucoup. Vielen Dank.
Thank you, Paul, very much. Father Helmut, your turn. Go ahead.
Unmute.
Two short reactions, one to Kathleen and one to Regina. Regina, it was at the beginning of the 20th century when in theology and in church appeared the first courageous concepts for the Second Vatican Council. Yes, it had been almost 60 years between, a large space for disappointment for all who wrote and discussed and were Yes, and were punished by the church, but they didn't give up. Yes, 60 years, I think, for the first. At the beginning of the 20th century, there were the first steps for new liturgy, for new understanding of the importance of Bible and so on, and of apostolate of the laic people and so on and so on. So I think we must have the long breath, not to say the long spirit for results. We don't have the privilege to see the results, but we have to engage for these results. And the other reaction is for Kathleen. Kathleen, you asked us Europeans if we can see something from outside. And I think there is, in the United States, there's already happening a lot of, there are really happening a lot of things around universities, from economy, from political circles and so on. I think there is already there's a lot of things which are happening now, and it will be important to support them and to give them courage and so on, and to connect with them. But from my point of view, I'm astonished about the first movements, critical movements against the Trump government. I don't know exactly if all churches. Another question, I think, on the side of the U.S. Bishops' Conference, it will last a little bit, but I think at the level, at the base of society, there's happening a lot of things, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, Father Rodney, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Maybe a question and then just an observation. I do value the input and the observations of my European brothers and sisters, but I find here in America, the bishops are quiet, and they've been quiet for a very long time. And I find that really rooted in fear. You know, I agree with that there needs to be a positive narrative, but there's going to be a price to pay for that. And there's a fear about paying that price. You know, because, you know, people are going to get isolated, people are going to get attacked. And you would hope that the bishops of our church will support those people who bring forth a positive narrative, but honestly, I would not expect the support. I mean, I trust that God's gonna, you know, provide me with the openness that I need. And if the support is there, praise God. If the support is not there, praise God. You know, it's a price that I've always been willing to pay. You know, because I've been to war. I'm a Vietnam veteran. And there are some things worth paying whatever price must be paid. Because I'm watching America's democracy being systematically dismantled. You know, and I've told people, and it shocked people in the church I'm pastor of, I said, you have to be impressed. You have to be impressed with your opponents and your enemies. It's being done, and it's being done, and it's being done because people surrender their fear. If I control your fear, I own you. If I control the fear of a community, I own that community. If I control the fear of a nation, I own that nation. And I don't need an army to do it. You know, and so, you know, we need to take, I agree, there needs to be more active voices calling out the truth. But when those voices are, I mean, and for me, that's a personal choice. If you know the truth, you have to proclaim it. But just be ready because you're going to be alone.
Well, we thank you for speaking out, and we're glad that you're a pastor. We pray that we'll have more pastors like you. Regina Nagel, you have your
Yes.
hand up.
Yes, thank you, Helmut, that you put up this point. This is exactly the same point my great-grandmother heard when she became president of the women's rights movement in 1905. The same comment my grandmother heard when she became president of a women's rights organization in 1950. The same comment my mother heard after the Würzburg synagogue. The same comment I heard when I started to study in the 80s theology. And now I'm telling the same story to my daughter and my granddaughter. I'm sorry.
Yes,
people are running away from the church.
The
We don't have the time anymore. We need to regain trust. People don't trust religious communities anymore. So you probably had enough people around in the 19th and 20th century, but it's the 21st century. People are running away, and they are not coming back.
But the Second Vatican Council has happened, yes, and things will also happen. We
and
don't
the
have the privilege.
had happened, and nothing happened.
Yeah, but that's another issue. But I want to say also that the most anxious people are the dictators in the world, yes? They are the most anxious people because they are fearing people who are standing up. And so let's go to those who are losing their anxiousness and try the dictators to become more and more anxious. I think that's my vision.
That's right. Yes, let's hear from Regina Nagel, because you had your hand up here.
I'm from Germany, and I've been for 40 years a pastoral worker here in Germany. And my English isn't very good, but I try, and I wrote what I would say. The first thing has to do with what you said, Regina Franken. This correlation of goodwill among reform-orientated Christs. And I think they will, it's necessary, this correlation beyond Christians. The reform-orientated Christians will become less. We aren't as strong as the conservative, as the traditionalists, and so the correlation must go beyond. It's not necessary to be a Christ, it's necessary to realize what's going on. And my two thoughts, difficult, I wrote and I read. One thing is what worries me greatly is how much bishops here and in Austria support traditionalist and often charismatic groups, or at least do not criticize them. German bishops oppose the AfD, but oppose not Catholic individuals and groups that are well connected to radical right-wing circles. I'm trying every day to shed light on this. And a second thought, no matter who is elected Pope, he will be conservative. I don't have much hope that it will be, who should it be? But what I hope is that it will be someone who has the courage to contradict Trump and this unchristian religiosity that is spreading in the USA and also in Europe.
Thank you so much for sharing. Appreciate it. If there's no more questions, I think we're running out of time. We don't want to miss anybody who would like to give their input. Have you copied down the websites of the different groups so that you can keep in touch with people in the chat? If you would like to join any of our groups, Clyde, before we go, and then Virginia Saldana. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I think Virginia was first, so.
Okay, Virginia, go ahead.
I just want to, remark that we have to be conscious that today religion is being used to divide people. And I very much agree with the lady who spoke before me, I think is Regina, who said that we have to expand our solidarity beyond religion. We should really go, knock down these boundaries of religion, because today religion is being used by politics in all the countries, everywhere. If you see, it is in India, it is in the United States, it is the right-wing Christianity in the United States that brought Trump to power. You have Netanyahu, propped up by the extreme right wing in Israel. So the right wing is what is being used in politics to keep them in power. And they create narratives that are actively circulated. Now, I think the US has a very powerful right wing with a lot of money also. And there's Malcolm Nazareth who commented about the Opus Dei. And I'm particularly concerned about the Opus Dei because they are in my country, in India, they are in my diocese, and they are in my parish. And I am shocked at the way the people think that they are very good people. They're very good Christians. They refuse to believe when I told them what the Opus Dei can do. And they told me that I was maligning them. And my children warned me, keep quiet. They're a dangerous group to engage with. So this is what is happening. The right wing in Christianity is becoming very strong. And I see it here in India with the right wing Hinduism. How they create hate, they create divisions, and that gives more power to the political leaders, They're using this. So I think we have to see how we deal with the right wing in the church. The Opus Dei has been operating in campuses in the United States, sort of getting their claws or their paws onto the brilliant ones, bringing them into their fold and using them. So how do we deal with these people? I am trying in my own parish, and I find it very difficult, and I'm very troubled to see the way they are spreading. So I fully support the idea that we need to move beyond our Catholic, walls and get out and collect all people of goodwill, whether they be Hindu, whether they be Muslim, whether they be agnostics, whatever. Get together people of goodwill. And I think we need to promote values and not talk about religion. Thank you.
Yeah, Clyde, can we?
Yes, that was very good, Virginia. The only thing I would add is I think we need, and I will call it, and Rini, you need to turn off your audio. We keep getting the feedback from you. What I would call a rotating coalition of goodwill. And I don't know how quite we put that together, but it deals with 2 points that have been raised. One is exhaustion. We get involved in these things and we spend years at it, as someone else pointed out, and then we don't. It doesn't look like we've gotten anywhere. But the second point is trust, because if all of us get exhausted at once, that's not what we want. What we need is some smaller coalition or but I don't know quite how to put it together, but where we would not all get exhausted at once. We could each have, a participation for our 3 years or, and then trust that the others that follow us and precede us would engage in the same enterprise, so that we would trust that there's some process that we're participating in, without getting exhausted all the time, but that we know that there's a working coalition. And that's why I termed it a rotating coalition of those who have goodwill. I'm not sure how we put that together, but I think something like that would be very helpful.
I just want to thank everyone for participating, and special thanks to Regina and Father Max, Father Helmut, to Paul, to Christian, to everybody who participated, and say certainly we should stick together, stay in communication and in prayer. And I think, Rini, we have a prayer of St. Ignatius we were going to close with in honor of Pope Francis. Do you have that, or do you want me?
I do. I have it. And
Okay.
we just want to encourage everyone that beyond being present with us today, which we so appreciate, go out and take action in some way, some form. Find a way to reach out to people who are suffering from this in all countries. Germany is going through its own kind of challenge, and Canada tells us they're facing it with there. So it's not only in America, but wherever you are, go out and take action and do something. And we ask you from America to please reach out to any American you know and share this recording of the first session or the second with them. Just encourage them to just listen so that they can be aware. And we'll now share the closing prayer.
And it's in honor of Pope Francis, who did so much for us, and he never tired. So we can't tire because we have the same Holy Spirit with us. And this is the prayer of generosity from St. Ignatius.
So let's all pray together as we close our meeting today out loud. Dearest Lord, teach me to be generous. Teach me
to serve you as you deserve.
As you deserve.
To give,
To give and not to count
the
cost.
cost.
To fight
and
not to heed the wounds.
to
To
toil
toil
and
not to seek for rest. To labor and not to ask rewards, save that knowing that I do your will,
my
God.
Thank you, everyone. This recording will be out as soon as possible.
Thank you.
See you next time.
Yeah. Rennie, you